everybody, it's more star rating videos. This time we have Hunter, Mage, and Paladin. And two of these three classes have really exciting decks to look forward to for the next cycle. Starting off with Hunter, we have what I think is going to be the tokeny Phase Beast Hunter deck for the next year. We have Fetch, Remote Control, Painted Canvassaur, RC Rampage, Jungle Gym, Hemet, and King Plush. Okay, so let's unravel this a little bit. I think the combo of RC Rampage into your Jungle Gym, which we'll have also pre-cast, is going to be so unbelievably strong that this deck is going to be tier 2. I just can't see it being anything less than tier 2. I don't think it's going to quite sneak into tier 1, but maybe it does. Maybe it just gets in there if you put the right deck together. Skill Command is coming back into rotation, which is a great card for the Beast Hunter lovers. The only thing you really want to do on your tokeny opening is make sure that your RC Rampage only summons 5 guys, or at least it only summons 5 guys. 4 is fine, 3 is fine, but I think you're going to be looking at the sweet spot being 5 and giving everything 2/2 instead, so you get 10/10 worth of stats for the cost. And then that'll give your Jungle Gym, maybe you'll lose 1 damage on it, but I don't think you will, because I think the slots that you'll use to break up the RC Rampage, well, one of them is going to be Jungle Gym, right? And the other one is probably going to be a Beast. There are Beast token spells out there that let you hide Beasts in stealth. I just think this is going to be so awkward to deal with. I think decks will have to put in cards they would rather not put into their decks to deal specifically with this Beast Hunter deck. What I will say, I think, and by the way, this is going to be 4 stars for all of the top cards. Hemet, I think, is only going to get 2 stars. I think people will test Hemet out. It'll be seen like, you know, if you get to turn 5 and you haven't beat your opponent, I know you might be laughing, but I'm being serious there. At turn 5, if you've not beat your opponent, maybe you put Hemet and you try and pivot slightly into a bit more value from your beasties, and then try and kill your opponent with a little bit of value. Personally, I don't think that's going to work. I think instead what you're going to do, instead of running through your Hemet, you're going to put in Hearthstone Brew instead and get a full refill of your hand, and I just pray you get a hand that has some direct damage to finish off your opponent. I think Fetch is going to be a great shooter for multiple beast decks as well. I don't think it will only go into the Face Hunter like token beast deck. I think it will go into the bigger beasties as well. Speaking of which, I think King Plush, sorry, oh my god, I'm going to do that so often. I think King Plush might make it into this token deck as well, just as like your big one last finale, right? Maybe at turn 9, you're running out of fuel, your opponent might be on very, very little life. You throw out your King Plush, you might even not buff the attack on this card, and it might just be enough to bounce everything back. Maybe you bounce a taunt minion out of the way, and you just get through this last 6 damage. As I was putting the deck together, I had like a slot or 2 remaining, and I put King Plush into one of those positions, so I think it might just make the cut. The other deck that I think is going to be out there, and by the way, I think there's actually going to be about 5 Hunter decks. The other big new one, though, will be a Big Beast Hunter, where we're going to have King Plush, the Mystery Egg, Tyrannosaurus. I think you're going to be running Mukla as well in this type of deck. And you're going to try and cheat out Giant Beast with your Mystery Egg with a 5 mana discount. And there might even be a variant, and I don't think it's going to be the same variant as the Big Beast Hunter, that might have Califero in there to try and copy all of a token, maybe, into King Plushes or into Tyrannosauruses, that type of gimmick. And I think that could be really, really frightening. I also think this little package of the Big Beast Hunters could slot into Highlander Hunter as well. It could go into many different places. As a result, I've given all of these also 4 stars as well. I think at least in some iteration of Hunter, these will all make a tier 2 deck. The final card that I've not really included in any of these is Patchwork Pals. As I came to build my decks together, I think I did make Patchwork Pal fit into one of them. I came to the realization this card is really just Call of the Wild, which was pretty strong for Hunter, right? It was pretty strong. But you split up the mana in a more manageable way, right? You play your Patchwork Pals for 2, then you get 3 minions at all cost 2. In combination, that is an 8 mana spell, which is what Call of the Wild was. Instead of them all just going straight onto the board, though, you get to choose when you want to play them. So there is a little bit more of a nuance associated with this card, but I think it's too slow for the token deck. It might go into the Big Beast deck, though, as just a little bit of a stall. especially in the Califero big beast deck if it does become a thing, as you need to be very, very careful with what minions you put into that deck, otherwise Califero will, you know, turn all your tokens into junk. So I've given Patchwork Pals 2 stars. I think people will test it out, but I think it'll prove to be a little bit too slow. Again, maybe the token deck just wants the Leok, though. Maybe they don't care about the other stuff, or the Huffer as well, I suppose. Leok plus Huffer. Maybe that's fine. I actually don't know. I might rate this one horribly. It might end up being the best card in the token deck, or the Beast Hunter deck, but I'm not sure. I think it's going to be just a little bit too slow for that deck. In Mageland... Oh, by the way, sorry, before I go into Mageland, one other deck that I could actually see a world where it becomes a thing, and it doesn't really use any of the new cards, it uses the core set more than anything. I think Secret Hunter might actually be a thing. There's a lot of weapon support thanks to the Titan set, and secret support from Titans as well. And I can definitely see a world where you build a Secret Hunter deck that just smokes your opponent's face down with weapons, and maybe throws in a few of the Face Hunter cards. So watch out for that one, because Ice Trap is coming back into the game, and Frozen Trap is also coming into the game. And every time there's been Ice Trap and Frozen Trap for Secret Hunter, they normally have a decent deck, right? So I think that could be a pretty solid archetype, especially if you generate your token board and then you put an Ice Trap on top of it. That's going to be really, really obnoxious to deal with for your opponent. Anyway, now we'll go to the land of the mages. We have Puzzle Master Khadgar. I think this card is going to go into your Excavate Mining Mage. The secret package, obviously with Objection rotating out, I think is going to be too weak to consider keeping it in the deck. And I think Khadgar will just slot straight in there. Nice little value card. Yeah, so immediately 4 stars. I think Mining Mage is still going to hover around this tier 2 region. They definitely lost all their support via the secrets, but they've got some nice stuff in this set as well. Now, the most exciting part of the kit, and I really, really wanted to say this was a tier 1 deck, but I stepped down from that just slightly. It's the Galactic Projection Orb, a Minionless Mage deck. I really, really like Yogg in the Box. I think it is going to be an insane card. I think Manufacturing Error is also very solid. Draw 3 cards, discount 9 mana. Very good. And I think Spot the Difference will be okay. As I sat and built the deck together, though, and, you know, you can definitely do this, and I think it's going to be a pretty good deck without any minions in it. It got me thinking of how often, though, is Galactic Projection Orb going to kill my opponent? And then I was thinking, like, would it be more consistent than Sith? And this is kind of where, like, I started to, you know, get a little bit concerned over this deck. I'm not entirely certain it's going to be as consistent as Rainbow Mage was or is, and I think Rainbow Mage is actually still going to be pretty solid going into the next cycle. So I ended up going on to 4 stars for all these cards. I think it's going to be a really fun deck to play. I think it's going to be basically Casino Mage. And actually, more to the point, I think there will be a hybrid iteration where maybe either you don't have minions or you'll run very, very, very few minions. So there is a possibility that you do get the no minion effect off Yogg in the Box. So realistically, I think you could drop Spot the Difference and not be too upset about it. And then Manufacturing Error and Yogg in the Box are both pretty expensive, so if you could shoot it for your minions and pull them out quickly, you might be able to cheat this minionless mage deck. I think that might be a thing. If you can sneak your Sith into there, then definitely you have multiple win conditions then with the Galactic Projection Orb. Or you just don't do that and you do run this like Casino-y mage. Now, we are losing the Energy Shapers, so the Casino Mage as it is now won't work. We're also losing Romash, sorry. So, yeah. That's another piece of the Casino Mage that is being lost. But maybe you just replace that with the Galactic Projection Orb and some nice new spells. And maybe that is good enough as like an alternate win condition. Anyway, very interesting to be a mage player right now. Then on the bottom row, less interesting. We have Frostlich, Cross Stitch, and Hidden Objects. Both of these could go into your minionless mage deck. Obviously, neither have a requirement saying you have to have no minions in your deck. Basically, as a result, 1 star to both of them. I think Frostlich Cross Stitch is pretty weak. It's just too fair at 5 mana. I think the intention of this was to use a card we're about to see in the future to discount this by at least 1 mana. At 4 mana, I think this is very playable. I think you would put it in your minionless mage deck, but I think there's better spells that discover more spells, and you want spells that discover spells in your minionless mage deck, as then you'll get double cast of random spells from Galactic Projection Orb, right? I think Frostwitch Cross Stitch doesn't give you this trigger, so I think it won't be good enough. Also, when you really, as I said, you pull it down, you draw the curtains. The Water Elemental is like a 3-mana minion, right? And this is a pretty old minion, so it's not a top-of-the-range super 3-drop. It's a pretty good 3-drop, don't get me wrong, but it's a 3-drop. So you're kind of doing 4 damage for 2 mana, and it is a conditional that you get this 3-mana reward for killing a character. And that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Sometimes you will fall up on this one. And if you ever play this as 5-mana deal 4 damage, even to the face, you're going to feel pretty bad about that. There's just better options, so yeah, 1 star. Hidden Objects, all the secret support for Mage has gone. They've lost their best secret. 1 star. I didn't put it in my minionless deck. It is one of those cards, though, that discovers another spell, so maybe it does get into there eventually. Perhaps my list is wrong. Yeah, maybe Hidden Object into a new spell. You play the other secret, even though the secret is pretty weak. You're happy because you've cast 2 spells for 3 mana. Maybe that's good enough. I don't think it is, though. Finally, we have 3 cards, which I did make a little bit of mistake on the reveal. I didn't notice that every single one of them was an elemental. So I think these are support cards for the elemental mage deck. Elemental mage right now is sat around the tier 3 region, but it's losing some incredibly important cards to the deck. So I actually don't think it's going to be a tier 3 deck post the rotation. I think it's going to drop into this tier 4 range. It really needs Frozen Touch as a finisher. I think the Adrian as well, potential finisher, and the Adrian copying your entire board with spell damage combo. I think losing those threats just makes it so much weaker. You're literally just trying to play this minion versus minion combat. And there are too many decks now that are good enough at dealing with minion v minion combat, so I'm sorry, I think these are going to be both 1 star. I also think Sleet Skater is just bad, full stop. I don't see this working. It's too expensive on the full version. The mini's fine, but the full version is just too expensive to justify it. Now, you might be surprised by this. I've actually given Triple Wick Trickster a 2 star instead. Of all of these cards, though, that might make Elemental Mage survive, it's actually this card, and I'll tell you the reason why. If you copy this with Mezzadune, it's a really, really good copy. Like, it might be one of the best copies you can get now. You suddenly have a 2-mana, 1/1 and a 1/2 that deals 6 damage to random enemies, split up 2 ways. 3 ways. That's pretty potent. And, I can definitely see you having this aggressive opening and you just machine gun them down with Triple Wicks. I think people will test that out. But as I said, I don't think it'll be tier 3. I think it'll go into tier 4. That being said, if it is tier 4, Triple Wick, you deserve the 2 stars, baby. Alright, and now the black sheep of the family. It's Paladin. So Paladin has been in a very nice spot. They've been tier 1, basically, well, I say for the entire time. That's not true. They've hovered around tier 1 for a while, being really obnoxious. They have an insane opening, and they have insane buff cards and Wind Fury, and you have to trade the minions, otherwise you always run the risk of losing. They've also got a great aura as well, that if you swarm the board with tokens, you have big sad time clearing it if you're not a control deck. Sadly, for Paladin, a lot of this early game 1-drops are rotating out. A lot of them were from Nathria. I think some of them were from the Egg was from March of the Lich King. So there's not as many good 1-drops to pull out anymore with your 4-mana finale card. And it doesn't give you taunt anymore, it just summons more minions. So you're getting more 1-drops, but the 1-drop pool is getting way worse for Paladin. So yeah, I think Paladin is in a really weird spot now post-rotation. And I think it's going to get hit very hard in terms of win rate. Anyway, I really don't know what the hell they were doing with Paladin cards. They're all so random, but I've tried to clump them together in somewhat fashion. I think the idea of all of this was to run them all in a mid-range Paladin deck, but that is far too fair to ever work. Anyway, for the first package, it's Tigress Plushie, Fancy Packaging, and Pipsy Painttooth. Cards that reward you for having Divine Shields, or having bonus effects in general in the case of Pipsy to pull them all out. 1 star to all of these cards. Man, Pipsy is a really, really bad card. I think it might be the worst legendary of the set. I know people are going to say, oh, it's incredible. You cheat out this guy and this guy and this guy. Okay. Have you heard of Kangor's Dancing Paladin? Kangor's Dancing Paladin had, the front lines, you summoned all of these minions from your deck, and invariably you skewed your deck in such a way that you only had giant, annoying minions to deal with, and your opponent just couldn't keep up with that turn. Also, you might be able to disrupt any combos in their deck. Pipsy is 2 mana less than To the Front Lines, but it's slow. It's on a death rattle. Your opponent might not kill this card. Your opponent might bounce it back into the deck, and Priest has a way to bounce minions back into the deck. Hunter has ways to bounce minions back into the deck. Rogue has access to silence. Priest has access to silence. I just don't see this card ever being good enough. If it goes off, there's definitely this high roll potential to get, I forgot his name now. The 8 mana Taunt Divine Shield, give yourself a weapon. I know it's a historically great card, but I can't remember his name right now. I just think it's just not going to happen frequently enough. And also, there's going to be times where you're drawing your patches, and you're going to play Pipsy, and you're not going to get like one of the Divine Shield minions. You're not going to get a Taunt minion, and then you're going to feel really stupid, right? You're going to feel really stupid about it. Also, Pipsy has no tribe, so it's very hard to tutor for it. It's 1 star. Fancy packaging, I think, is too specific. There are synergies with the Shroomskavate. You put Shroomskavate on a minion, it gives it Divine Shield. You use fancy packaging to strip it. Oh no, you don't even strip it. You give it the +2/+3. Sorry, I forgot it doesn't strip it. So yeah, you can put Divine Shield on any of your minions to give it +2/+3. Is this a replacement for Garden's Grace? No, it's a huge difference between what it was 5/5, but even 4/4 and 2/3 with a conditional Divine Shield. I think it's too specific. It's a card that's going to sit in your hand for a while, and yeah, that's about it. I just think it's too fair. Tigress plushie is very similar to Beast Ziliax. You lose out on the magnetic, of course, because it is a beast, but it has miniaturized, and you get the 1/1 at the end of it. Also, it doesn't have taunt, so it's missing a little bit from Ziliax. I think it's a pretty solid card. I can definitely see it going into the Highlander Paladin deck, and maybe that's where it makes its home. Maybe I've been a bit too harsh on giving it 1 star, but I'm not even convinced it's that good for the Highlander deck. The Highlander deck normally wants to use the Cattle Rancher to tutor for a beast, because the Highlander payoff is a beast. So you can't put Tigress plushie into that deck with the tutor, as you'll lose your tutoring. So for that reason, I think it's just not going to find a home, sadly. I'm sorry, Tigress. Alright, now we get Painter's Virtue, which is the hand buff support. Virtually no other card in this set is hand buff, 1 star. There's just not enough support for it. We've been there before, old man. This ain't it. Now we get into the Aura package. Trinket Artist, Cardboard Golem, Crafter's Aura. Things that tutor for auras, things that make your auras last longer. And if you didn't notice, or you didn't know, the recent patch where they reverted some of the nerfs to cards that are going into Wild. So by the way, in case you were wondering for this week why stuff like the School Teacher is a 5/4 again, or Renathal, it gives you 40 health again, it's because of this. They've rewound the cards back for them going into Wild. So it's like a last week hurrah for them. In the patch notes of that, there were some actually pretty big changes to the game itself. For example, if you coin on 10, you get to temporary 11 mana instead. That's kind of, that's important. That's a pretty big change. One of the other things was auras can stack now. So in the past, they were like secrets. If you played an aura, you couldn't play the same aura again. It would block that slot. Now you can, so you could actually weave a crafter's aura on top of another crafter's aura. And for, 3 turns and then maybe 2 turns, for 2 more turns and then 3 more turns on top of that, you get a 6-cost, or 2 6-cost minions. That's a lot of tempo, right? Yeah, but it's a little bit too fair again. It's pretty slow. You need 14 mana to do that. I don't see it again. 1 star to all of these cards. I think the Cardboard Golem's not enough good auras. I think Crafter's Aura will come up too late for it to be good. I think it'll just be dead as Paladin by that point with the aura in the deck. But if it does work, then Trinket Artist will probably be in that deck. Then we get Wind Up Enforcer, which I think is meant to be part of this hand buff Paladin archetype, because tradable minions, when they go back into the deck, don't lose their buffs. And the idea was that you would buff this card up in your hand to High Heaven, and then eventually you would play it and it, you know, would be 4 minions with +2/+2 on top of it. Wow. 1 star. Way too slow. Way too slow. I just don't see it happening. You probably don't want this in your Highlander deck either. It's not a great card to discover from your deck. I just don't see it. I think it's too fair. Flash Sale. Now, if Token Paladin lives through the next set, this is actually going to be a pretty solid card in that deck. 1 star. I don't think Token Paladin is going to live. I think there's just too few good 1-drops. And if it ever becomes pretty good, then people will just deal with it, right? They'll play some cheap control cards. It also, like, is this unfortunate situation where it sits on the mana cost of the Crusader's Aura. And I was like, would you rather play this or Crusader's Aura? Crusader's Aura is statted in the way that you get more attack than health. So I think Crusader's Aura would beat this in a fight, right? You might run them both together, but I just, again, I don't see it. I don't see the dream. All right, are we going to get a full house? I've never, ever given every single card from a set 1 star before. Toy Captain Tarim. 2 stars! There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Not all 1 stars. I very, very nearly gave it 1 star, though, out of pure salt. I really don't like this Paladin set. I think it was all just too fair. I think it was trying to, like, hark back to this mid-range Paladin. There's a reason the mid-range Paladin died in the past. It just wasn't good enough. It was far too fair. Tarim, I think, is a pretty good card, though. I think the Highlander Paladin decks will definitely run it in that deck. They're losing Anachronos, so maybe Tarim finds his way into that archetype. He may also make his way into the Earthen Paladin deck. Again, because Anachronos is being lost. It's also a nice little, like, control card for the mid-rangey area. Unfortunately, I think all of these archetypes are going to get pushed down the roster, which is why I've only given it 2 stars. I don't think any of these Paladin rosters are going to be Tier 3. This is my bold claim. I think Paladin is going to be one of the worst 2 classes into the next set. I think they lose so much early game support. I think if you're going to run it as like a mid-rangey or late game control deck, why would you play this over Warlock or Priest? If you're saying, you know, oh, we can play the Highlander deck, I'm sorry, but the Plague deck exists and you can't cleanse the Plagues. And this deck without the Highlander condition is not good enough, full stop. So yeah, I think it's going to be Earthen Paladin with the Flag Bearer, but again, that deck really needed a good early game to, you know, support you playing these pretty slow tempo Earthen cards, and I just don't, it doesn't have it anymore, and none of these cards help that. So yeah, I'm sorry, Paladin, I think you're going to have a rough time ahead. But again, if you don't like Paladin, drinks on you. Anyway, that is all of the star ratings for Mage, Hunter, and Paladin. Join me tomorrow for Rogue, Shaman, and I think it's Priest, right? See you tomorrow. Bye.